Hello. Thank you for being here today on another episode of MOMFIT with Joe Peters. I am Joe, your host, and I want to give you the warmest welcome to the Spanglish World Network and the H.E.R Network on single TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download the Single TV in the respective app stores in iOS and Android devices. While you are downloading, make sure to leave a comment. The app is free and we love to hear your feedback. Single TV can also be found in Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV, Roku, and Roku Stick in all the smart TVs since 2016. The mission and the vision and the purpose of Mumford with Joe Peters is helping you, mom, to win the marathon of motherhood without burnout. And to do that we bring every Friday amazing guests like Jamie that help us with different topics. So doesn't matter what part of the world you are. If you are having a challenge, a question, a problem, or you are struggling with any part of motherhood, please send me a DM. Go and follow me at Joe Unicorn Coach on Instagram and Facebook. I handle my own social media. And if I cannot give you a answer, I will make sure that a beautiful expert like Jamie is joining us as soon as possible to help you, because in Monfet we know that is a marathon, not a sprint, and that for that marathon we need a village. I am super excited to have Jamie here. Jamie is one of those people that everybody loves as soon as she get in the room. Like, we were in the green room already and I already love her for her energy, for her authenticity. So I'm completely sure that this is going to be a fantastic episode. Jamie is a clinical therapist. She's also a mental health practitioner owner, host of Good Enough with the trauma therapist, and mom with CPTSD. Jamie is on a personal mission to remind moms and parents that, listen very carefully, write this down, you are good enough. Jamie has worked extensively with individuals who are experiencing emotional triggers, irritability, low self esteem, and feeling disconnected from themselves and those around them. Hello, all the moms in the first 2, 3 years of our babies. Jamie helps parents like us to break cyclical patterns of trauma, advocating for a balance between caring for themselves and others. I know that this is going to be an epic episode. Please, if you don't have a notebook or your phone to take notes, hurry, hurry, go ahead and find something, because you are going to have so many golden nuggets. Jamie, welcome. I would love to start with having a little bit of your story of how you get into this amazing work of breaking cyclical patterns of trauma and
Okay.
balancing between caring for us and others.
Oh, so that's a lifelong journey. But I'll say I started therapy when I was like 8 years old. I was a kid that had a lot of anxiety. I had parents that had a lot of trauma growing up, and I love my parents. They did the best that they could, but it definitely impacted how I saw myself in the world, right? And then when I became a mom, I got even more into. So obviously, before I became a mom, I became a social worker, and then I became a therapist, and then I always knew I wanted to help people, right? But when I became a mom, I became really, really passionate about helping other moms, because I think having my own kid just helped me understand what my mother went through so much. Um, my son was born very, very high needs. So he was a baby that you could not put down. If you did, he would wake up within a half hour. And it was like no sleep, like just no sleep ever. And yeah, so it was really, really rough. But it made me realize like how my mom, she was always there for me, or tried to be, but she couldn't regulate her own anxiety. So when I was escalated and anxious, she could not be the calm. And that's really what I needed as a kid. And that's what was happening with my son. So even as an infant, like he would scream and scream and scream. And I would notice if I could regulate my nervous system, if I could stay calm, right, and be the calm for him, he would calm so much more quickly. So then I became really, really interested in intergenerational trauma and all of that. And did a lot of research on that, took a lot of continuing education on that. And I started out in the field actually working with oppositional youth because that's what I was defined as, an oppositional youth. But now I pretty much exclusively work with parents because I'm like, well, if you get the parents and you help them correct their stuff, then we don't wind up with oppositional youth who feel not good enough all the time and act out. And that's pretty much how I got to where we are now. But that burnt out mom feeling, oh, I feel like so many of my clients, like and dads too. I have some dads that are like full-time dads on my caseload. And that sense of responsibility between, especially if they have a career, and children is really overwhelming to a lot of people, and finding that balance and finding happiness in all that chaos can be really hard.
Uh, and I absolutely love what you're saying into is a lifetime journey,
Mhm.
and that as more we work on the right things, as more we are going to break those cycles of trauma and the generational cycles. And I love, 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 love how you ended and were clear into the kid is not the issue. They are just a mirror.
Mhm.
So it's about like working in ourselves and seeing what is triggering us and why things are getting so. I was laughing because one of my closest friends, when my son was probably close to 2, he started negotiating. And then I was telling her, and she was like, "No, you do not negotiate. You are going to be done. You do not negotiate."
God
But
bless.
but that could be like seen as confrontational. But what I found is that if I negotiate in a lot of things, not everything can be negotiable with a 3-year old, but a lot of things can. And what I found is that as more I negotiate the things that can, as easier our life is because it's about giving him a little bit of power and control. And then the reality is, for example, one that is a big one is after swimming, we go into the shower, a swimming class, and he loves a shower. So he never wants to get out. So I'm like, okay, 2 minutes. And he look at me and say, like, no, 5. And then I'm like, no. And then we do it. But then the reality is 2 more minutes are not going to completely change my day.
Yeah.
And they're going to be a lot to him to feel that he had a say. So I love that your focus and your concentration is into working with the parents and saying, hey, let's gonna stop trying to fix the kids. The
Yeah.
kids don't need to be fixed. The kids are showing up a reflection of you. One thing that I noticed a couple of weeks ago, almost a month ago, was the only times that my son yell
Mhm.
are when I'm yelling. So if I am out of stress and then I'm like, ah, or loud, then immediately he does. So I absolutely love that. Now, I always ask my guests to share their favorite phrase. And our topic today is breaking free, overcoming the societal expectations and reclaiming our self worth while parenting and being moms. And Jamie's favorite phrase was from Melinda Gates. I'm going to give you kudos because I love that was a woman's quote. A majority of people pick male's quote. So extra points for you, extra brownie points for you for picking a girl's quote. And Melinda Gates' quote is, a woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman. Why do you pick that phrase and what that means to you?
So I feel like as women, we are socialized to be small, to be quiet, to be voiceless almost. Like we just have to listen to what everyone else and the messaging that we get from everyone else. It's down to our socialization as children, like strong, like little girls who have big voices are called bossy and bratty and other really not nice names, whereas little boys are like leaders, right? So from a very small age, it is ingrained in us that we are not supposed to take up too much space. We are not allowed to, and that affects like literally everything from what we choose to do with our careers or whether or not we have careers. That has to do with how we view our body size and our body image, how we view ourselves and what we're capable of. It is so socialized to us to just not have a voice. So any woman who can speak out and truly authentically like share their viewpoint and their voice, I really feel is a strong woman, because I can tell you as one of those women that it is not without backlash. You will definitely hear some backlash if you are a woman who has a voice, because it is almost antithesis to our culture. Like strong women are feared. Even when you have a new boss that's a female, how women in positions of power are spoken about compared to how men in positions of power are spoken about is entirely different. And they can take the exact same actions, and a woman is always poo-pooed somehow, but like they like and there's also like racial stereotypes that play into that, right? Like the angry black woman, or you know, there's a lot that goes into that. So for me, it's just, if you are a woman with a voice, I want you to know that you're strong and powerful, even if you don't feel you're strong and powerful, because you're speaking out despite the fact that there's been so much conditioning and messaging telling you that your voice doesn't matter and that you should stay quiet.
And I love that because that is part of what I also feel and think is a way to control, because as less voice we have, as easier it is to control us, and as easy it is to brainwash us into what we have to say is not important, when actually, like you were saying, I agree, it is very powerful, and we need more and more of that. So let's gonna just start with um a little bit of where are the roots of socialization and its impact on terms of how that socialization becomes sometimes a jail and a prison, because it creates these social expectations that I believe nobody have them as hard as we moms
Yeah.
into those shoes.
Yeah. So I think the easiest way for our listeners to look at this is just think about all the conflicting messages that you get about being a mom, right? And even within like moms, right? We're also designed to just be so against one another. Like women are so catty towards one another. There's like career women who trash talk the stay-at-home moms, and the stay-at-home moms who trash talk the career. And it's like we're all doing the best that we can. There's no reason for us to be like pitted against each other. But even that's kind of like socialized into us. Anything that's different is not good. And there's one right way to do things. So there is that, but I think we are just, as I was saying, it depends on, it's so many different multifaceted things, like religion, right? Depending on, I was raised Catholic. If you're Colombian, I'm assuming you're also of Christian origin. um, so yeah, like even in the religions organizations that we're brought up in, like women are supposed to be like uh, cannot think of the word. I'm sorry, pregnancy brain. But we're supposed to be like listening to the men in our lives, right? Like we're supposed to, what is that? Subservient? Is that the right word? I'm not quite sure, but we're supposed to listen to the men in our lives, right? And we're supposed to be, our value comes from being caretakers. Our value comes from motherhood. Our value comes from what we do for our family, right? And that is what we are told brings us value. But there are so many women who, though they love, and I love being a mom. Being a mom was like my number one goal in life. I was told at 18 I wouldn't be able to have kids. So mom was priority number one for me. But a mom isn't everything that I want to be, right? Like I want to be a mom, but I also want to be a mom that can show my kids that, like, especially now having a daughter, you can be a good mom and still have a career where you help people and give back and feel good about yourself and have a life outside of your family, right? Like you can do both. And I think that there's so much messaging behind our value coming from our role as caretakers. And that's not just of our kids, that's of our parents, of our extended family, of everyone around us. And when that constant messaging happens, what happens with a lot of my clients, and honestly with myself for quite a while, is that we try to take care of everything in the home, everything at work, be everything for everyone else, and we're absolutely miserable because we never take care of ourselves. Our needs go entirely out the window because we're like, we have no time. We have no time to take care of ourselves. But we're also enabling all these other people around us who are fully capable. I don't know why women think we have to take on all the burden. Like, your husband is capable of doing things. Your children are capable of putting their clothes away and putting them in the laundry hamper, putting their dishes in the sink. Like, we can ask for help. And when we do, we become so much better mothers and people because we're more regulated, because we're happier and we're not feeling like constantly on edge. And I think what comes with it too, because it's a societal expectation, especially if it's something you're raised within your family, right? Like, it doesn't go noticed. And then a lot of women feel really resentful. Like, I'm doing all of these things for everyone and no one appreciates me, and that just overwhelming, like, all of this together just makes us feel so not good enough, so unlovable, so unseen, so unheard. And it's like, the number one person that needs to stop that is you, because you're not listening to yourself, you're not listening to that inner voice that says, I'm not happy, I don't want to do this, right? And that's the only way we can actually facilitate change.
I love that, and so many golden things that you said, and amazing, empowering reality. And it's taking ownership, because it's very easy to be in the victim role of, for me, I'm doing everything. But when we start saying, okay, what part I can control?
Yeah.
I was actually, I shared in my social media a couple of days ago, because my son gave me a great reminder. He was in a playground in one of those spinning wheels. The kids were older than him.
Mm,
And then, because the kids were older than him, they started speeding up. And then, as a mom, I was like, hold tight. But I didn't want to pass my fears. But it was amazing because he was the smallest one, and he speak up. He
yeah.
just went and say, hey, you, slow down. You too fast. And then at that moment, it hit me, because when do we as women lose that confidence to ask for what we want? And then we start thinking that other people's needs are more important than ours, that we cannot ask for what we want and need, and then go into that doing it all that you were saying. Part of one of my programs is about that, is you can have it all, but you cannot do it all. And that
Yeah.
is the problem, like you were saying, we are being brainwashed to say, oh, you can have it all, but you need to do it all. And then we try to do it all, and then we fail miserably and we burn out. And then the conclusion of that is, see, it's not possible having it all. It is possible. What is not possible is that you do everything.
Yeah.
I love how you were talking also about your daughter. I was watching, because I have a son, but I was watching a TikTok yesterday that hit me really strong, because there was a dad saying, hey, your boys are going to learn from you, but your daughters are going to marry you.
Yeah.
And is a lot of also what you were saying into the husband is, if we are not allowing our husband to take roles in the house or help, then we are actually unconsciously telling our daughters, you need to marry a guy that don't do anything, because
Oh yeah.
they are going to marry their dad. They're going to marry what they learned their dad did as a husband. And I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I'm reading again the book Drop the Ball from
Mhm.
Tiffany Duffield, and she talks a lot about this, about dropping the ball. And you were saying, I don't know why women cannot ask for help and want to do it all. I really think that is a lot of that good girl syndrome, and how we want it to be perfect,
Yeah.
and we are being always qualified for the performance.
Yeah.
So I remember a few months ago, I was having a conversation with one of my closest friends, and she was like, she was talking about how stressed she was about how dirty her house is. And then her husband was like, it's okay, no big deal. And she was like, you don't understand. If people are going to judge our house, they're going to judge me, not
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
And I think that is matter also of, and I want to hear your opinion,
Yeah.
losing control. Because I think that part of that is that we want people to help, but we also want them to help the way that we do it. So help me, but follow this step by
Yeah.
step. Use this product first, this second. And I think that that is where the issue is, because they are our husbands, our kids, our partners, our wives. They are different people. So it's
Yeah.
about us to letting go without letting loose and say, hey, it's your job. I don't care how you're going to do it. The
Yeah.
end result is that I have clean underwear. My husband does laundry. And 2 days ago, I was like, I just wear my last pair of undies. I don't have underwear. I don't care if he's going to do one load at a time or he has to spend hours doing 5 loads at once. The end result is that I don't run out of undies. And then 2 days ago, I was like, this is my last undie. And then guess what? Yesterday, I have undies. So I
Yeah.
want to hear about that with you.
I 110% agree with what you're saying. Um, as far as I think we enable the people around us, right? They don't do it my way is kind of just an excuse. Your way isn't the only way to do it. And quite frankly, like I used to say this to my husband all the time because when we first had kids, he was very, very terrified of being alone with a baby. Um, and I used to just be like, you're gonna have to figure it out, right? Like you're gonna like I would just leave him. I'm like, here's like you would leave a babysitter, you don't leave them clueless, you leave them with a list of here are all the things that you need to do. But I would literally physically leave the house, and I advocate a lot with that for my clients because when we're there, especially when you are the person that takes over and just does it, and especially when it's a newborn and it's screaming and it's so I don't know about you, but it always makes my skin crawl when I hear my kids cry. So we like want to go in and rescue them, but then they'll never learn, right? So just like doing the laundry, they'll never learn. Like there has been my husband had to learn how to do laundry. There has been things that have been shrunken. There have been, but you know what? He learned over time and now he can do the laundry. He can do the dishes. The man can cook. He actually said to me the other day, he's like, I can cook without a recipe now. I can just look in the fridge and know what to cook. And I'm like, good job, honey. But I think a lot of that is us enabling them because they don't have those skills. So then you teach them those skills. Same with your husband, same with your kids. Like, oh, my kids, like it's hard for them. Okay, but like you're enabling their behavior. And if we go back to what you were saying earlier, which I think is crucial, the role of fathers in our children's lives, like not only for our daughters, like I would never marry a man that expected me to do everything because I always say to my husband, you know who you married. I'm not that girl. But, I don't want my daughter to ever grow up feeling that way. And with my sons, like I will routinely say to them, pick that up, sir. I am not your maid. I am your mother and you have to respect me. Like, because if we as moms, right, because I have two boys, um, if we cater to every aspect of our kids' needs. And I know that like culturally, right? Like I was raised Italian. That's very much what Italian mothers do. We're very overbearing. Colombian mothers are the same way. My stepmother is Colombian. But it actually creates a lot of anxiety in our kids because they're not learning how to do those things themselves. And it actually winds up installing them this belief that you don't think that they're capable of learning these things when we step in and rescue them all the time. So, like you were saying with your son on the playground, giving them the second to verbalize themselves before we play helicopter parent is amazing because now he has that like, hey, I stood up for myself and he feels good. And that's a good core memory now. That's like, I don't need other people to stand up for me. I can stand up for myself. But when we're constantly rescuing, whether it be our husbands, our wives, our children, our parents, and we don't give people those tools, you can help someone without doing it for them, right? And I think that is really, really important. And it's something that we forget. And that might be because how we were raised, right? Like maybe our parents just did it for us. So we don't know how to teach someone else like here are the steps or here's some resources for you to go figure this out on your own. Or I'd call this person. We don't need to step in and do every step for them and hold their hand. Um, and I think that they make for better fathers, and our children make for better, like, more confident humans when we give them the skills instead of doing it for them.
And I love that because it is interesting, right? Because it's that reparenting and that going back and forth. But let's go now with that reparenting, how we can start identifying, and not only identifying, but also challenging some of those negative core beliefs
Yeah.
that came grounded and inside of us from our parents. Like, I remember, for example, my grandma, my dad's mom. I have memories. She was an amazing cook. I have memories of me being allowed to get inside the kitchen to watch her cook, and she was like the most amazing, wonderful grandma in the world. And I also remember I also remember hearing her a couple of times telling my male cousins to get away from from the kitchen, to get out of the kitchen. It was more about like the kitchen is a place for girls. So I was a girl, I was allowed to get there, sit down in my little stool and talk with her and watch her make all these cakes and amazing recipes. My cousins were not. They were like, get out of the kitchen. You don't know what to do in the kitchen. So how we can start realizing, identifying, and then challenging some of those negative core beliefs that can be dictating how we show up as moms and how we show up as partners, and how are making us steal from our kids and our family the opportunity to show up and learn.
Yeah. So I think the easiest question to start asking yourself, right, is what are some of the things that I'm saying to myself? Like, we all have that internal voice in our head that kind of shouts just negativity at us. At least all of us anxious folks do. I don't know about the general public, but anyone with anxiety, there's this like inner critic voice that says a lot of negative limiting beliefs at us. And I think the first step for a lot of my clients is just writing down what those beliefs are. Like, do you call yourself stupid all the time? Do you say, like, this is my fault? Do you overtake responsibility for things? Are you doing things? A lot of women, it's around boundary setting, right? Are you saying yes to things that actually don't make you feel good? Are you saying, like, do you ever say no to anything? And one of the things that really helped me with that is reminding myself that every time I say yes to something, I'm saying no to something else, right? So if I say yes to coming on this podcast, right, that takes time out of my day to do something else. This is very much worth it for me, and I'm so glad I'm here. But we have to remember these things, right? Because there are times that we want to help other people because it makes us feel valued, right? But then we wind up putting too much on our plate, and then we have nothing to fill our own cup, right? So what are the thoughts that are limiting us from being the type of person that we want to be? And I think it's like, for a lot of my clients, it's the feeling after those conversations or at the end of the day. Um, Coming back at the end of the day and being like, why was I so anxious today? And really like journaling about that and thinking about like what came up for me that was causing me anxiety or making me feel angry or making me feel upset, so that we can look at our behavior and see if there are any patterns there, which usually there are. But that's like the first step, is just finding what the thoughts are, and then finding what are the patterns and triggers to those thoughts, so that we could be a little more mindful in those moments when maybe want someone from our extended family asks us for something and we feel very obligated to family, that we remember to pause, take a step back and be like, let me check my calendar and get back to you. You don't need to say no right away, right? You can always just be like, I'm really not sure right now. Let me look at things. Let me talk it over with my spouse and see what's on our schedule. And I promise I'll get back to you. If it's too anxiety provoking to say no, like, then maybe you could send a text. We'll work on building your way up to having those challenging conversations.
I absolutely love that. And actually, if you are watching us and you want to go to my Facebook and read, because it's a long post about my child lessons, I have a lot of other lessons. But part of that was him being able to articulate what he wants and say no, no, I don't want it to be that fast. And it was amazing for me because he's 3 year old, so he doesn't have any of those preconcepts and fears and belief. So he was not worried about, oh, they are all older than me, so they're going to think that I am just not brave enough, or they are not going to want to play with me if I tell them to slow down, or so many other things that if I put the equivalent in my situation or situations of my clients, we will be running in our head before we actually say, slow down. He didn't care one little penny. He was like, I'm not with this speed, slow down.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that is part of that. And I love what you're saying that every yes is a no. I say that to my clients a lot too. I was a people pleaser big time. I say yes a lot to the point this was my break point. I was still in Colombia. I say yes to three different friends in Cali,
Mhm.
and their start times were within 30 minutes. So I was going to be in three different places in Cali, that is a city of 3 million people, within an hour and a half. And I remember running like crazy in my car, sweating, being stressed in the traffic. And then two of my three friends were upset with me because, of course, I was absolutely late.
Yeah.
And then that day at night, I was like, this is stupid. I'm saying yes because I don't want to hurt their feelings and I'm not comfortable saying no. And at the end, I'm feeling horrible. They are upset with me. I didn't get the purpose that was connecting with them. And then I decided to do a year of no. For an entire year, I say no to every single thing that was minimal for me. Like you were saying, the increase, I was still not comfortable to say no to like the confrontational big things, but the little things. Do you want bread? No, thank you. Do you want to go do your nails? No, thank you. To just get used to it, to say, hey, the world is not going to end if we say no. I
Yeah.
love what you were saying into, hey, I love what you're saying because for some people, it's like they will start hyperventilating right now when you say,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to say no. And you're like, no, you don't have to put yourself in that level of discomfort.
Yeah.
You can say, let me check. I am not sure. Can I get back to you tomorrow? And then without the pressure of I need to give an answer and how she's going to look at me or how he's going to look at me, see your calendar and see really what no you are going to give if you say that yes. And one thing that is very common with us moms, especially in that racing, is we give our yeses to everybody else. So at the end of the day, who stay with all the no's? Us. No time for gym, no time for eating good, no time for self-care, no time. Why I have all these no's? Because I'm giving my yeses like if they were unlimited and free, and they are not.
Yeah. That is so very, very true. We only have a limited amount of things that we can say yes to, and when we say yes to everything, it burns us out. And I think, learning to build that muscle is a real thing, right? So a lot of the things that I discuss with my clients is, trauma. And I want to say for the listeners, trauma is anything. It's not this big T stuff, right? Like this scary, scary stuff. It's anything that overwhelms your ability to cope, right? So that could be the loss of a loved one. That could be just not having any control at all in your childhood. That could be growing up poor. That could be there's so many things that can really shape how we feel, right? So just to start there. But when you're repeatedly, especially if you grew up in a household where you saying no or you having any sort of boundaries was not acceptable, saying no to people for a lot of my clients is like, they're going to be mad at me. They're not going to love me anymore. I'm going to be abandoned, right? And it's deep and it feels like such a surface level thing. But for a lot of people it is really really deep that they feel like if I am not all the things that everyone expects me to be, I will be alone. I will not be able to cope in this world. And that is scary. So I want to just say for the listeners, I know it's an easy fix to say, like it sounds easy, just say no. But it also can feel really uncomfortable to start saying no, which is why I think it's great, Joe, that you're like, just start with the little things, right? Like we don't need to say no to like, you're not going to say no to going to somebody's wedding because you don't want to deal with family drama. That should not be your first no. That's going to be a lot of backlash. but you can say no to like, oh, like, I really would love to go to that barbecue this Sunday for Father's Day, but we already planned something with my husband. So it's really important to him that we have alone time. Maybe we could do that another day, right? Like we can start a little smaller. But I just wanted to remind our listeners that like even though it's a simple thing, it can be a really hard thing and acknowledge that.
I love and thank you for that, because of my archetypes. For my archetype personality is more like that gung ho 1 year of no, because that is my personality. But it is scary and it's hard. And I want to tell you that my year of no was 24, 15 years ago.
Wow.
And still I have that feeling. Like this week my adoptive Brazilian dad texts me and say, hey, do you want to come Saturday for a churrasco to celebrate Justin's birthday? And we had a big garage sale here. And I promise you, I for a second think thought how I can make this work and do the garage sale and then run and go to the barbecue. And then I was like, and literally, I felt uncomfortable. I think while we were talking, I didn't reply right away. I let it sleep over. And then the next morning, he followed up and I say, Dad, we have a garage sale. It's going to be really tight. What about next Saturday? So I'm sharing that to tell you this is not going to be an easy fix that hocus pocus abracadabra, now you are super comfortable saying no to everything and you never had issues with boundaries. It's a
Yeah.
journey, like Jamie saying, a lifetime journey. That is how she start her story, a lifetime journey. For some of us it took 24 years, 30 years, 40 years of that pattern. Change that pattern is going to take time too.
Yeah.
And I will even I will even be brave enough to say it will never be completely easy if you are recovering for the trauma of saying yes and being a people pleaser person. What it's going to be is you are going to get more and more used to it, to feel uncomfortable about it and still do it and say, oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable about this and I don't want to let down that person, and I'm gonna still say no, and I'm gonna still hold my boundaries.
Yeah. That is so so true, Joe. So like if when we experience trauma, right, it does continue, right? It affects who we are and in good ways and bad ways. Honestly, there's a lot of things that if I didn't grow up with what I grew up with, I would not be as good at recognizing facial expressions. I would not be as good at human psychology because a lot of that is just how my brain was automatically wired given my upbringing. And I wouldn't want to trade that for the world. Um, but our goal should never be a life without, right? I think when a lot of people think of self improvement, they're like, I want to be free of anxiety, free of sadness, free of depression, free of all of these things. That is never going to be a realistic goal. If you have a life filled with love, right, and happiness, there are going to be losses. Like people die, things, bad things happen, and that we can't numb ourselves out to that, right? It's more about learning that when these struggles come up, like you were saying, how do I cope a little better than I did last time? How do I not go into self sabotage mode and totally derail myself for 3 years, right? Like maybe you get a little sad and you derail yourself for a month, but that's progress, girl. That's progress. We'll take it. But it's all about just doing better with the challenges and coping better over time and feeling more confident in yourself and not having these challenges be like life altering, like in regards to how you see yourself. I think once we feel more secure in who we are as people and we love ourselves and don't need so much of that external validation, it becomes so much easier to navigate through life even with that anxiety or sadness or whatever. It just, we have more belief in our ability to handle and thus it becomes easier to handle, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I love it. And I love how it's a lot into that trauma informed with how trauma is different. And I will need you to come back to my show because we are going to briefly touch on the last point. And I think
Okay.
that this point deserves an entire episode. So if you are agree with that, we will schedule something for August or September to go deep, deep into this But I want us to say, okay, we start with socialization and our upbringing and our expectations. Then we move into how we can identify and challenge those negative core beliefs in ourselves and create that awareness and how hold boundaries. And now how we can start feeling that empowerment into that new way of showing up as women, as mom, as wives, through community and self-care that are two must that majority of us don't.
Yeah. And I think like to start, anyone that's listening to this show right now, like that's a really great start. Just hearing messaging that is more female positive and empowering and surrounding yourself with that kind of messaging is really, really a good first step because I think we're so clouded in our day to day, even just what comes up on the TV and the commercials, like all around us with this negative, like going back to the beginning of our socialization as women and what our roles should be is being in communities like this where women are not conforming to that and speaking out against that and saying like you can do both and I'm going to support you along the way is a really great first step. So I'm super happy for anyone who's here. So look into more of that. There are so many things in our communities. I know for me as a new mom, I joined Fit for Mom, which was like a workout group. They also have like mommy boot camp. It's whatever's near you, right, guys? But it was a workout group that you could bring your infant and meet other new moms. And like you were saying, like the first couple years is so isolating. It's so isolating when you have an infant. So to be around other just moms in general, there's apps called like the Peanut app where you can meet other local moms in your area. There are so many resources out there that we can definitely dive super deep into next time. But it's also just like that commitment to yourself and whether it be with a coach or a therapist. If you have trauma, I highly recommend going to someone who specializes in trauma for therapy, not just any therapist, because there are very different modalities, right? We do a lot of what we call the bottom up approach that incorporates mindfulness and body work and releasing trauma from your body. There's a lot of studies that show that talk therapy can actually be more escalating for a lot of people with trauma because we're not releasing that trauma from our bodies, we're just reliving it. So committing to something that's going to help you with your self-care. There's meditations. Yoga Nidra is like a wonderful thing. If you go on Insight Timer, there's plenty of free ones or YouTube or wherever you've calm. There's a million places, but Yoga Nidra is great. You could put it on before you go to sleep and it actually helps to regulate your nervous system. So there are, yeah, we could talk for an hour about this. There's so many things.
We will. I will send you a link and we will schedule the second one. And I think that as we start wrapping up, I want your thoughts on why do you think that even though as females that is so ingrained in our nature,
Mhm.
we as moms struggle so much with those two bubbles that is a strong community and self-care.
Why? I think that because we're socialized that way, we feel like it's an either or choice. Right? It's the either or choice, and it's not. It's not an either or choice. Like I now have a community of moms that I can go with to the park and we're with our kids, right? We're raising our kids, but like we're still socializing and that is self-care, right? Just getting out of the house and being around other humans is self-care. But it's that either or choice and we have to kind of work on our mindset to believe that we can have both and that we are also worthy underlying all of this feeling of not good enough, right? And that the need for external validation is our own feeling of not feeling worthy ourselves, not feeling deserving of being taken care of, right? And that I want women to know, right, that your kids do not learn just from what you say. They learn from what you do. And especially now that I'm having a daughter, I'm like, oh, Jesus, I need to work on this even more than I already have because she's going to pick up on the fact that, like, everyone, if I'm having a bad day, I'll be like, oh, I look fat. And that's like little things like that are things that stick out to our kids. And they're like, oh, we have to be skinny, right? Like we're telling them with our actions and our behavior what is appropriate. Like my parents would tell me to ask for help all the time, but did my mom ask for help? No. No, no. So, like, did I ever ask for help as an adult until I did my own work? No, never, because it wasn't really what was taught to me. It might have been what was said to me, but it was not what was modeled for me. So, so much of that for me and a lot of my clients realizing that I take care of me and I better me and I learn how to have good life balance and set boundaries and teach boundaries to my kids and not worry about everything everyone says about me all the time. I'm going to model that for them and they're going to have an easier life. And for me and a lot of my clients, switching it back to them was an easier switch than focusing on us. So maybe try that.
I love that, and for sure, stay tuned because Jamie for sure is going to come back and be in the show. Jamie, as we start wrapping up, if you could send one message into everything that we shared today of breaking free, to all the moms that are watching us that are in different places of their motherhood, pregnant, postpartum, even with toddlers or older, what will be that message? And then if they fall in love with you like I did and want to hear more from you and want to learn more from you, how they can connect with you, how they can keep being in your world.
Okay, so first, my message to all the moms would be you are deserving and worthy of taking care of and honoring yourself. And by doing that, you're not being selfish. You are modeling how you want your kids to be treated in the future. Because if we don't take care of ourselves or treat ourselves well, then other people won't treat us well. So we're modeling that for them. Number one. If you want to work with me or follow me or whatever. I do have a podcast. It's called Good Enough with a Trauma Therapist. It streams pretty much everywhere. You can look that up. If you go to my TikTok, which is at GE Trauma Therapist, my link tree is there, and that has everything. So that has all of our websites. We have a practice in Missouri, as well as 2 locations in New York. We also provide virtual services in those states. And you can follow us there and get links to whatever upcoming workshops we're doing. We plan on doing retreats in the future, doing like trauma intensive retreats, as well as like some free giveaways of how to work on our mindset because we do a lot of that with our clients.
So we will put that on the notes for everybody to have it. Repeat one more time the TikTok.
GE Trauma Therapist. So
GE Trauma Therapist. Please, everybody, go there, follow her, go to the link tree, go into her world. It is an amazing work, and I will tell you this, and I will happily be proved wrong. But I want to even say that there is not one single mom that went through pregnancy, birth, and the first 7 years of life that don't have some trauma
oh yeah.
at any point on that. Not even, and we are not even starting with the childhood. So working on that is super important. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. It's
Thank
been a
you for having
pleasure.
me.
Looking forward to have you back in end of August, September, something like that, to go deep into the community and the self care. Thank you for bringing that awareness into the trauma informed approach. It was a pleasure. And for everybody else that is listening to us, go follow and find Jamie. And when you are in the social media channels, make sure that you also follow me, Joe Unicorn Coach. Send me a message. And I would love to get in contact with you. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it.